Okay, we're going to look at using trigonometry to find the length of an unknown side. And you'll need your calculator. And here are the steps we're going to follow. Now, let's just make sure your calculator's in the right mode first. So, mode 1. So just press mode and then 1. And then the other thing we've got to do is check that your calculator is properly in degrees mode. Now, if it's got a little D there, that means it's in degrees mode. But just to double check, you can go Shift and then Setup. And you'll see the little degree option there, which is number 3. So if I press 3, that'll be in degrees mode. Now, just make sure all those settings are correct before you proceed. All right, here are the steps we're going to follow. I'm not going to read through those, but I will point them out as we go through them. Let's get straight into the questions. Okay, so first question, find the value of the pronumeral. In other words, find the length of this side D, correct to 2 decimal places. Now, step number 1, if you look on your sheet, says to mark the sides, label the sides, opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. Now, first of all, there's only one angle indicated in this, and that's this one here. One acute angle, that is. And this is the side opposite. This is the adjacent side, and this is hypotenuse. Now, we're really only given information on two sides here. We're given information on the adjacent side, and we're given information on the hypotenuse. So there's nothing on the opposite side, so we're just concerned with the adjacent and the hypotenuse. Now, if you remember, we had this little word, SOHCAHTOA, to help us remember the formulas. Now, if you look at the A and the H there, we come over here, A and H, that means we must be looking at cosine. Cosine is adjacent divided by hypotenuse. So I'm going to write down, so step 2, I've decided whether it's sine and cosine or tan, so it's cosine. And step 3 is to write an equation using the correct ratio. Okay, so write an equation. So I'm just going to go down cos theta. So I'm basically just writing the formula for cosine. All right, just using my little word here, SOHCAHTOA. So cosine is adjacent divided by hypotenuse. Now I just replace all the pronumerals in that formula with the labels in the diagram. So theta is the angle, so that's 58 degrees. So I go cos 58 degrees equals, and the adjacent side is D. So D over, and the hypotenuse is 15.2. Okay, so there's my equation that I've written. So I've done step 3. Step 4 says to get the pronumeral by itself. So this is an equation like you normally would see. It's got an equal sign, it's got a pronumeral. Now we're going to get the D by itself. This is D divided by 15.2. So we do the opposite of divide, which is times. And then times 15.2. Okay, that allows us to cancel numerator with denominator. And now we've got D by itself. Okay, so we've got D is equal to, now you have to put this whole thing into your calculator. So just getting your calculator ready, you're going to go 15.2 multiplied by cosine 58. Now you should close the bracket, but you don't have to on the calculator. It should still work. And to 2 decimal places, 8.05 meters is your answer. Okay, so 8.05 meters. So the length of this side here to 2 decimal places is 8.05. Okay. All right. Now copy that down and have a go at part B. In part B, you're going to have to use your degrees, minutes, seconds button to enter. So let's call this a hashtag example. I want you to go through the same steps and see if you can get this one right. Okay, so we're going to look at the angle here. We're going to label the sides opposite. This is the adjacent side, and the side opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse. Now, which two sides are we working with? We are working with the opposite side because that's the side we've got to find, and we're also given information on the hypotenuse. So thinking back to your word, Sokotoa, O and H is what we're looking at, and O and H is the first part of the word here. So O and H, that means we're looking at sine. All right, so we've done step 1 and 2. We've labelled the sides. We've decided it's a sine ratio. Step 3 is to write an equation. So that means we're going to write down the formula for the sine ratio. And then you replace all the pronumerals in that equation with the ones from the diagram. So the angle is 37 degrees 50 minutes. So you're going to write down sine 37 degrees 50 minutes equals, and the opposite side is P, and the hypotenuse is 20. Okay, now same thing as before, we're going to get rid of the divide by sign. And then what we're going to do, then we're going to multiply by both sides by 20. And then cancel those. And that'll give you P is equal to, so it's going to be 20 times sine 37 degrees 50 minutes. So let's look at that. 20 times sine 37. Now you've got to use the degrees, minutes, seconds button here. Degrees, 50, and then minutes, close bracket, equals. Okay, so to 2 decimal places, 12.27 is your answer. Okay, so 12.27, and then again it's meters. Okay. Okay. Now let's look at part C. So I'm going to do this one with you, and then you can do the next one. Part C, we're going to do the same steps as before. So we're going to label the sides. So starting off with, this is the angle that I'm looking at. So this is the opposite side. This is the adjacent side, and the hypotenuse. Now, which two sides are we working with? Obviously the 80 meters, and obviously the hypotenuse. Okay, so thinking back to your Sokotoa. Well, that's a good word to remember. Now, it's opposite and hypotenuse again, isn't it? So opposite and hypotenuse, which means it's sine. So it's going to be the sine ratio again. So let's write down the formula. Sine theta is equal to opposite divided by hypotenuse. All right, now replace the angles. So you got sine 55 degrees is equal to the opposite side, which is 80 over W. Okay, now notice the pronumerals on the bottom here. Now I'm going to show you a little shortcut to use. So when the pronumerals on the bottom, right, you do a little shortcut to make the working out easier. I'm going to show you why this shortcut works, right? Now what you're going to do is you're going to swap the entire left-hand side of sine 55 degrees with the W. Okay, so that's going to give you, I'm going to put W here, the 80 stays in the same position, and then you've got sine 55 degrees. Okay, now let's work that out in the calculator. It was 80 divided by sine 55. 80 divided by sine 55. No need for the degrees button. And then equals 97.66 to 2 decimal places. That's meters. So let's write the answer down, 97.66 Right, now we should use the approximation symbol. Actually, we should have done that in all the others because we're rounding. Now, why does that shortcut work? Now, I'm going to show you why this works. That shortcut of swapping. So whenever the pronumeral's in the denominator, you can swap it with the left-hand side to make the working out easier. If you don't do that, you do it the long way. And this is why the shortcut works. This is a mathematical reason. So you've got 80 over W. Now you know with fractions, to get rid of fractions, we do multiplication. Okay, so what I would do, hang on. Yeah, what I would do, there we go, is I would times both sides by the W to get rid of the denominator. Okay, so times both sides by the W. So obviously that cancels. And then you're left with W. Let me just write this down. Left with W times sine 55 degrees equals 80. Okay, now you want to get the W by itself. Okay, so you do the opposite to times sine 55. You divide by sine 55. Okay, so you divide both sides by sine 55 degrees. Now, that means that cancels with that. You're left with W equals 80 over sine 55 degrees, which is exactly what we had over here. So you get the same answer. So one's the long way, one's the short way. Okay. So whenever you get a pronumeral in the denominator, you swap it with the entire term on the left-hand side. Okay. If you don't do that, you have to do it the long way, this way. All right. So this is the long way. There we go. All right. So copy that down, and then I want you to do part D by yourself. So we'll call this the hashtag example. Try part D. Okay, so let's label the sides. Here's my angle. This is the opposite side. This is the adjacent side. This is the hypotenuse. Okay, hypotenuse. All right, now obviously there's only two sides we're working with. It's the opposite side and it's the adjacent side. So thinking back to your SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. Now, opposite and adjacent, if you come over here, it's going to be tan, isn't it? Tan is what we're looking at. So let's write down the tan equation. Tan theta equals opposite divided by adjacent. Now replace all the pronumerals. The angle theta is 38 degrees, 11 minutes. 38 degrees, 11 minutes equals opposite side. Opposite side is 16.34. And then the adjacent side is t. Okay. Now, you can see the pronumeral is in the denominator again. All right. So what we're going to do is the shortcut. So we're going to take all of this, right, and swap it with this. All right. So that will give us t on the left-hand side. 16.34 stays in the numerator. And my new denominator is tan 38 degrees, 11 minutes. Okay, so using your calculator now, let's get the calculator up. So you're going to have, all right, so we're going to use the fraction button here, 16.34, or you could use the divide key over. Now it's going to be tan. Now you have to use the DMS button here, 38 degrees, and then 11 minutes, close bracket, then equals 20.78 is the answer. Okay, 20.78. Now make sure you put the correct units there, which is millimeters. Okay. All right. And we should use the approximation symbol, of course, because this is rounding. All right. Now, last question. All right, I want you to try this one. Another hashtag question. All right. So opposite side, let's label it size. Opposite side, adjacent side, hypotenuse. Now, which two sides are we working with? Well, the hypotenuse and the opposite side. So that if you go back to your SOHCAHTOA word, okay, now for SOHCAHTOA, opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So you're going to write down sine theta. So you're going to write the formula down first. Equals opposite over hypotenuse. Now replace the pronumeral. So 65.2 degrees equals the opposite side, which is 25, over the adjacent side, over the hypotenuse, which is n. Now, notice the pronumeral is in the denominator. So you're going to do the swap. Okay, you'll swap all of this with this. Okay, that gives you n equals 25 over, let's scroll up a little bit, sine 65.2 degrees. Okay, so let's see what that works out to be. N is equal to, so calculator out. Now I'm just going to use my divide by key for variety for this one. So I'm going to go 25 divided by sine 65.2. And we don't need the degrees button, only if you've got the minutes and the angle. Okay, 27.54 is the answer. Okay, 27.54. All right, and that is meters again. All right, no centimeters in this PDF. All right, that's it. Make sure that all that is copied down.